Payback times.
The smell of ozone and hot metal is my incense. It's the scent of finality. I lowered the welding helmet, the world narrowing to the brilliant, sizzling blue-white point of the tungsten electrode. My breath, steady and controlled, fogged the inside of the lens for a second before clearing. My hands, encased in thick leather, didn't tremble. They never do at the finish line. The final seam on chrysalis awaited, a 12-inch join along the lower curvature where the oxidized steel met the polished bronze. 5 years of my life lived in this industrial studio with its 20-foot ceilings and perpetually dust-speckled windows were distilled into this moment. The sculpture was massive, 8 feet tall, a complex abstract form that suggested both a protective shell and something straining to break free. It was the most technically demanding and emotionally honest thing I'd ever made. The arc flashed, the metals surrendering to the heat, flowing together into a seamless molten bead. I guided it with the patience of a surgeon. Steady, let the puddle form. Now move. The internal monologue was calm, procedural. It was the same part of my mind that a decade ago would parse a 100-page merger agreement for fatal flaws. Different tools, same forensic attention. As I worked, the memory of the thick envelope from the Verge Gallery, propped against my coffee-stained drafting table, hummed in my peripheral awareness. The Public Art Commission, a $500,000 installation for the new city plaza. The contract had arrived by courier this morning, and I'd allowed myself only a glance, enough to see the dazzling number, the city's official letterhead, before locking it away like a temptation. First this, first the final seam. The weld completed, I killed the torch, lifted my helmet, and blinked in the sudden relative quiet. The steel hissed as it cooled. I ran a bare finger carefully away from the heat along the new seam. Smooth, perfect. A final physical period on a very long sentence. I stepped back, pulling off my gloves, and just looked. The euphoria was a slow, warm flood, starting in my chest and spreading out to my fingertips. It was done. Chrysalis was no longer an idea, a sketch, a collection of fragments. It was whole. After the wave of feeling receded, the practical lawyer brain, the one I could never fully silence, clicked back on. I walked to the sink in the corner, scrubbing grime and flux from my hands with the gritty, citrus-scented soap that never quite got everything out. My eyes drifted to the envelope. Celebration could wait. Understanding came first. I sat at the drafting table, the contract a weighty presence. The studio was silent except for the distant hum of the city. Through the old brick walls, I broke the seal with a clean metal ruler, not my finger. The cover letter was pure Julian Thorne, flowing script on heavy creamstock. Elara, your vision is exactly what the city needs. This is your moment. We are thrilled to champion you. Charm printed on expensive paper. I set it aside and turned to the agreement itself. The first few pages were standard gallery artist boilerplate, or so they seemed at a glance. Commission percentage, delivery timelines, insurance obligations. My eyes, trained by 10 years in the trenches of intellectual property law, began skimming for the dangerous words, the vague phrases that did the real work. They were the termites in the foundation, unseen until the whole structure groaned. And there they were, nestled in Section 7, the intellectual property grant. My artist's hope, the part of me that had been buoyant minutes ago, wanted to read it quickly and move on. My lawyer's mind forced a slow, deliberate pace. The artist hereby grants to the gallery, for the duration of this agreement and any and all renewals, an exclusive, worldwide, perpetual license to all works created by the artist during the term, including but not limited to the right to reproduce, prepare derivative works, distribute, and publicly display. I stopped. The fluorescent light above the table buzzed softly. Perpetual. Forever. In licensing, it's a word that should make your blood run cold. It doesn't mean for a long time. It means until the end of copyright, which is my lifetime plus 70 years. My grandchildren's problem, exclusive. Not just a right to sell, but the only right. If I granted this, I couldn't sell prints, license images, or allow reproductions of any work I created while under this contract, even works totally unrelated to the city commission without Julian's permission, and likely without him taking a cut. Derivative works, a legal black hole, that could mean anything from a t-shirt. With my sculpture's image to a filmmaker using it as a backdrop. The gallery would control it all. The commission was a single piece for the city. But this clause was a net, thrown over my entire creative output for as long as I was tied to Verge. I read it again, then a third time, parsing each comma. The euphoria was gone, replaced by a familiar cold clarity. It was a predator's clause, dressed in elegant legalese. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. A text from a number I'd saved only last week. Julian Thorne, Elara. Heard you're putting the final touches on Chrysalis. Perfection takes time. I've secured a private viewing room at Le Soleil for 7 p.m. Champagne is on ice to celebrate the commission. Say you'll join me. I stared at the screen, then back at the contract. The juxtaposition was the whole play. The sparkling lure and the hidden hook. I knew the script. I'd drafted versions of it myself for corporate clients who wanted to own everything, but to see it aimed at me, at my art. I typed a reply, my finger steady. I'll be there. Looking forward to discussing the agreement. Discussing, that was my word, my flag in the ground. Le Soleil was the kind of restaurant where the lighting cost more than my monthly studio rent. Low, golden and flattering, it made everyone look like they'd just closed a lucrative deal. Julian Thorne rose from a plush banquette in the corner as I was led over. He was in his late 50s with a head of artfully silvered hair and a smile that was both warm and acquisitive. He wore a charcoal suit that whispered rather than shouted with no tie. Elara, you look radiant. The studio agrees with you. He took both my hands in his, a practiced gesture. I can feel the creative energy. Julian, thank you for arranging this. I extracted my hands and sat, placing my folder containing the contract, now annotated with sticky notes in my neat legal script, on the table beside me. A waiter materialized. Julian didn't consult me. The 12 Dom Perignon, please, and the scallop crudo to start. He turned his full attention to me. This commission, Elara, it's more than a sale. It's a coronation. The city hasn't commissioned a work of this scale from an independent artist in a decade. You'll be the face of a new era for public art here. He spoke with a conviction that was intoxicating. He painted a picture, my name on plaques, my work defining a civic space, the influx of new patrons. He was selling a future and he was good at it. The champagne arrived, its pop a festive gunshot. He filled our flutes. To Chrysalis and to the masterpiece it will lead to for the plaza, he said, clinking his glass against mine. I took a sip. The bubbles were sharp, clean. It's an incredible opportunity. I've been reviewing the agreement you sent. A flicker almost imperceptible in his eyes. Too smooth to be annoyance. More like mild surprise that I'd led with that. Ah, the necessary evil, he said, waving a dismissive hand. Dreadful stuff. My lawyers insist. It's all standard gallery boilerplate, I assure you. We protect our artists, I'm sure. My background is in law, actually. Intellectual property, so I tend to get into the weeds. I kept my tone light, conversational, an observation, not a challenge. His smile widened, genuinely this time. It was the smile of a chess player who enjoys a clever move from his opponent. Is it? I didn't know that. How fascinating. A lawyer artist. That explains the exquisite precision in your work. He leaned forward, confiding. Then you, of all people, understand how dry these documents are. Full of varices and perpetuities to scare off the amateurs. Between us, the spirit of the agreement is what matters. A partnership. I believe in you, Elara. This contract is just the frame. You're the painting. He was refilling my glass, his charm a soft, relentless pressure. Just the frame. It was a brilliant line. It made concern over terms seem petty, unartistic. The spirit is important, I agreed, but the terms define the partnership, specifically the licensing grant in Section 7. It's remarkably broad for a commission of a single work. Julian's expression became one of patient, benevolent education. That clause is there to protect the gallery's investment, my dear. If we're going to pour resources into promoting you as our exclusive spotlight artist, the public relations, the connections, securing this $500,000 commission, we need assurance that the works we build your name with remain associated with our brand. It's about coherence. It's standard. Exclusive spotlight artist. That was new. The contract mentioned an exclusive representation, but this was grander, more binding. He was layering on verbal commitments, building a structure of assumption. So this applies to all works I create while under contract, I asked, feigning a need for simple clarification. Well, of course, it's a holistic relationship. Think of it as an exclusive recording contract. The label promotes the album, the artist creates under its banner. Everyone wins. He took a long drink. But we're getting bogged down. Do you have any idea what this commission could do for you? The freedom it will give you? No more scraping for grants. You can focus purely on your vision. That's what I'm offering. Freedom. The trap was so elegantly baited. Freedom in exchange for all future control. He was asking me to trade the copyright to my unborn children for a single golden egg. It's a compelling vision, I said, matching his smile. I'd like a few days to consider the specifics. To have my own counsel look it over? I was careful not to say lawyer. Counsel sounded less adversarial. For the first time, his charm hardened at the edges like cooling wax. Time is the one luxury we don't have, I'm afraid. The city committee meets on Thursday. They need a signed artist to present. A formality, but a crucial one. I've already hinted strongly that you're our artist. He spread his hands. I've gone out on a limb for you, Elara. A verbal agreement tonight would secure it. We can handle the paperwork signatures tomorrow. The pressure was suddenly a tangible thing in the air between us, thicker than the restaurant's scent of truffle and money. He was creating urgency, using the city's timeline as a lever. Verbal agreement. He wanted me to commit now, while the champagne and the flattery were working, before my lawyer brain could fully mobilize. I let the silence hang for a beat, 2 beats. I looked down at my glass, then back at him. I appreciate the limb, I said, my voice still warm, and I am thrilled about the commission. Let's say I agree in principle. Pending a final review of the terms tomorrow, I'll have my notes to you by noon. It was a compromise. It gave me the night. It gave him enough to perhaps tell the city he had me. His eyes searched mine, calculating. He saw enthusiasm, he saw gratitude. I hoped he didn't see the cold analysis underneath. Finally, he beamed. Excellent. That's the spirit. To partnership. He raised his glass again. I clinked mine against it. The crystal rang with a clear, fine note. To partnership, I echoed. But in my mind, I was already home at my computer, digging. The celebratory scallops tasted like ash. I made polite conversation for another 30 minutes, then pleaded studio fatigue, an excuse artists are always granted. Julian walked me out, his hand a proprietary ghost at the small of my back. Sleep well, Elara, your future is bright. In the quiet of my condo, the adrenaline bled away, leaving sharp focus. I poured a glass of water, not champagne, and booted up my laptop at the clean, modern desk in my study. The contract lay beside it. First, I reread every word. This time with the red pen, I circled perpetual. I underlined exclusive. I drew a box around derivative works and put a question mark so large it bled into the margin. The contract wasn't just broad, it was a land grab. The grant of rights was assignment light. All the control of ownership without the upfront price tag. He wasn't buying my copyrights. He was renting them forever for the price of representation. Then I moved to the digital world. I didn't search for Julian Thornscam. Too obvious. I started with Verge Gallery artist experiences, then independent artist gallery contract review. I found the usual art forums filled with complaints about low sales and high commissions. But then, in a niche subforum for sculptors, I found a thread titled VG and the Long Game. My heart beat a little faster. I clicked. The posts were a mix of anger and despair, shrouded in vague language, fear of retaliation, clearly. User Bronzewich, signed with VG 3 years ago, was the next big thing. Now I can't sell a print of my own work without them taking 70% the contract. I didn't understand the clause about all media formats yet to be devised. Now they say they own the rights to any NFTs of my pieces. I never agreed to that. Use a stone leaf. Got out after 2 years. It cost me every penny I'd made with them to buy my way out of the exclusive license. They called it a partnership dissolution fee. My lawyer said the contract was ironclad. Felt like selling my soul. Use a forged path. He's a charmer. Makes you feel like family. The contract is the trap. The perpetual license is the lock. He doesn't want one piece. He wants your pipeline. No one used Julian's full name. It was always VG or he. The stories were fragments, but the pattern was a clear, ugly picture. The method of operation was consistent. Discovery, charm, the big commission offer, the pressure to sign, the entrapment in a licensing web so tight it became a cage. These artists weren't naive. They were hopeful. He exploited the gap between the two. I leaned back in my chair, the blue light of the screen washing over the annotated contract. The cold, determined recognition was complete. This wasn't a negotiation over percentages. This was a strategic defense of my intellectual property, the foundation of everything I was or would be as an artist. The law, which I'd left behind to build things with my hands, was now the only tool that could protect what my hands had built. The irony was bitter and perfect. I spent the next 2 hours drafting an email, not to Julian, to an old friend from my law firm days, Sandra Chen, who now ran her own boutique practice specializing in artist advocacy. I attached the scanned contract, my redlined version, and a concise summary of my meeting with Julian. Need your eyes on a predatory licensing clause. This feels like a Thorn specialty. I hit send just after midnight. As I was brushing my teeth, my phone lit up on the bathroom counter. A new text. Julian Thorn. Thrilled you're on board? The city reps want to see Chrysalis in our space tomorrow. I've already drafted the press release naming you our exclusive artist. We're a team. The words glowed in the dark room. Already drafted. Our exclusive artist. We're a team. He was moving fast, creating facts on the ground. My verbal agreement in principle was being treated as a binding handshake. The trap wasn't just set. He was already springing it, using social and professional pressure to make retreat costly, to make me complicit in my own capture. I wiped my mouth, put the toothbrush away, and picked up the phone. I didn't reply. I just looked at the message, feeling the weight of the next move settle onto my shoulders. The creative euphoria of finishing Chrysalis was a distant memory. The professional suspicion had crystallized into something solid, something usable. I knew what a perpetual exclusive license could do. It could silence an artist forever, turning their life's work into a revenue stream they no longer controlled. Julian Thorn saw a passionate artist he could finally bind to his gallery. But he'd missed the crucial footnote in my story. This artist knew exactly how the binding was done, and more importantly, how to sever it. I turned off the light. The screen went dark. In the sudden blackness, a strategy began to form, clear and sharp as a new weld line. Tomorrow, I would bring Chrysalis to the Verge Gallery. But I wouldn't be delivering a masterpiece into his hands. I would be walking into his gallery and laying down my terms. The scent of stale coffee and recycled air in the corporate high-rise was a ghost from a past life. I had traded this for the smell of steel and ozone, but today I needed the particular skills cultivated here. I sat in a sleek, minimalist waiting room on the 22nd floor, overlooking the city's geometric grid. The plaque on the door read Aegis Risk Management. It was a fancy name for a private investigation firm run by a man I had once deposed. Marcus Ford emerged from a glass-walled office. He had not changed much in 10 years, still built like a retired linebacker, with a calm, assessing gaze that missed nothing. He had been a forensic accountant for the other side in a massive fraud case. I had shredded his client on the stand, but he had respected the thoroughness of the shredding. Afterward, over a grudging drink, he had said, "You're wasted in litigation. You should be doing this." "Counselor," he said, a slow smile spreading. "Or is it artist now? I saw the piece in the Tribune. Impressive." "Marcus, I need your particular brand of digging," I said, getting straight to it. We moved to his office. I laid it out. Julian Thorne, Verge Gallery, the contract, the forum whispers. I handed him a copy of the agreement, my red annotations like wounds on the page. I need to know who he is, not the charming gallery owner, the business structure, past partnerships, any litigation that's been settled quietly, if he's shopping artists' rights to third parties. Marcus scanned the document, his eyes flicking to the key clauses. He let out a low whistle. "This isn't a contract, it's a colonization. You think he's building a portfolio to flip? That's my fear. A portfolio of intellectual property he does not own but controls in perpetuity. Low overhead, high potential yield for a bulk sale of reproduction rights." He nodded, tapping the paper. The derivative works clause is the giveaway. He's not just planning to sell sculptures, he's planning to license images, maybe even three-dimensional scans for commercial use. The artist does the work. He owns the pipeline. Classic middleman empire, but with legal teeth. He looked at me. "This is going beyond due diligence. You want me to find the skeleton key." "I want to know what he's really selling," I said. "And I need it before I'm the one locked in the vault." We agreed on terms. He would start with the gallery's corporate veil, dig into its holding company if it had one, and discreetly inquire about any pending bulk licensing deals in the interior design or luxury retail sectors. As I stood to leave, he said, "You know, most artists in this situation come to me after they're already screwed. It's expensive to dig out. You're doing it right. I've seen the view from the bottom of the hole." "Marcus," I said, "I'd rather not visit." My next stop was across town in a historic building converted into sunny, book-lined offices. Sonia Reyes had been my senior associate at the firm, the one who had taught me how to dismantle a hostile witness. Now she ran a practice dedicated to protecting creatives. Her corner office was a blend of legal precision and warmth. Neiman Marcus prints on the walls, a towering ficus tree, and a perfectly organized standing desk. "Elara Vasquez playing defense for once," she said, embracing me. She smelled of lemongrass and expensive ink. "Sit. Tell me everything." Over a pot of jasmine tea, I did. I described the meeting at Le Soleil, the pressure for a verbal agreement, the text treating it as binding. I showed her the contract. She read it in silence, her expression growing grimmer with each page. "Oh, Julian," she finally sighed, not with sympathy, but with professional disdain. "He's using the oldest playbook in the predatory gallery guide, the Champagne Ambush." She set the pages down. "Let's start with the verbal agreement. In the art world, they're tragically common. A handshake over canapes, a "you have my word" over whiskey, and they're worth precisely the paper they're printed on, which is none. She leaned forward. "But here's where it gets dangerous. Under the statute of frauds, a contract that cannot be performed within 1 year, like a multi-year exclusive representation, must be in writing to be enforceable. So his verbal, 'you're our exclusive artist,' is legally hot air. However," she held up a finger, "if you act on it, if you start creating work for him based on that verbal understanding, or if he incurs expenses promoting you based on it, you can get tangled in claims of promissory estoppel or implied contract. It's messy, it's expensive, it's exactly what he wants. A gray area where you're already financially entwined before the terms are clear. I nodded, the lesson slotting into place with cold clarity. So his urgency, his draft press release, is about creating facts, creating reliance. Exactly. He's building a narrative of partnership, Sonia said. Now, the other dagger he's likely to try, work made for hire. She picked up the contract again. This clause about furnishing preliminary concepts, models, and sketches as required for the commission. If you are an employee or if you sign a contract specifically stating the work is made for hire and it falls into one of 9 narrow statutory categories, which a public art sculpture might, then the gallery, not you, is considered the author and copyright owner from the moment of creation. Poof! Your intellectual property vanishes before the first weld is cooled. The air in the room felt thinner. He hasn't used that term yet. He will. When he pressures you for those sketches, the strategy is threefold. Sonia ticked them off on her manicured fingers. 1. Document everything. Every email, every text, every note from a conversation, date, time, attendees, summary. Create an incontrovertible timeline. 2. Establish and fortify your prior art. Chrysalis is finished. Document that finish date conclusively. Register the copyright on it and your past portfolio. You cannot license what you don't clearly own. 3. Formalize your counterterms in writing. Send him a letter or better, your own draft agreement that clearly, narrowly defines the scope of the license for this specific commission. By putting it in writing, you force the issue. You replace his vague, predatory framework with your clear, limited one. And if he ignores it, I asked. Sonia's smile was razor thin. Then you have a written record of his bad faith. If he acts as if an agreement is in place, uses your images, announces the commission while ignoring your formal terms, it strengthens any claim you have for copyright infringement later. You're not being difficult, Elara. You're being professional. In our world, professionalism is armor. I left Sonia's office with a blueprint. The anxiety of discovery was channeling now into a cunning, meticulous energy. Back in my studio, I did not touch a torch. I opened a new digital folder, VG Defense. I started a log, April 12th, 7:02 p.m. Text from JTE, press release and team. I attached a screenshot. Then I turned to Chrysalis. I took high-resolution, time-stamped photographs of the finished piece from every angle with that day's newspaper visible in a corner of the shot. I uploaded the images to the US Copyright Office's electronic system and filed a standard registration for a completed work of visual art. The fee was a pittance compared to the value it protected. I did the same for my last 5 major pieces. The certificates would take months, but the filing dates were the critical shield. Finally, I opened a blank document. I did not revise his contract. I started from scratch. Draft limited license agreement for public art commission, Plaza Ascendant. It was a single page. It identified the one work to be created. It granted the city a perpetual non-exclusive license to display that specific sculpture in that specific location. It granted Verge Gallery a non-exclusive 5-year license to use images of that specific sculpture for promotional purposes related to the commission. It explicitly stated that all other works by Elara Vasquez, including Chrysalis, remained under her sole ownership and control, and that this agreement did not create an exclusive representation relationship. It was clear, narrow, and bulletproof. I attached it to an email to Julian. Julian, following up on our discussion. As we move forward with the Plaza Commission, I've taken the liberty of drafting a concise agreement that captures the scope of our collaboration for this specific project as we discussed. This should help streamline things with the city. Best, Elara? I sent it at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. The perfect time for it to land, be seen, and be potentially ignored in the rush to the weekend. His reply came an hour later, not by email but by phone. His voice was syrup over steel. Elara, my dear, I just saw your document, so diligent, but completely unnecessary. We have a standard agreement that covers all this. My lawyers would have a fit if I started signing bespoke little notes. The spirit of our handshake is what matters. We're beyond this. I just want everything clear for the city, I said, my tone light, accommodating, playing the slightly obsessive-compulsive artist. To protect you as much as me. A patronizing chuckle. Your heart is in the right place, but trust the process. Now I need those preliminary sketches for the Plaza Committee by Tuesday. Think big, think legacy. There it was, the demand for preliminary work. The attempt to start the creation process under his auspices, blurring the lines of authorship. I'll see what I can put together, I said. I hung up and added to my log. April 14th, 5:45 p.m. Call from JT dismissed draft agreement. Requested preliminary sketches for commission. The following Monday, the trap began to spring from his side. An announcement appeared on the Verge Gallery's website and social media feeds. Verge Gallery is proud to announce that our spotlight artist, the extraordinary Elara Vasquez, has been commissioned to create a major new work for the Metropolitan Plaza. This follows the triumphant completion of her masterpiece, Chrysalis, which will be exhibited at Verge next month. The future of public art is here. Accompanying the post was the professional photo I had sent him weeks ago of Chrysalis, the one without the newspaper in the corner. He was using my intellectual property to promote a deal that was not signed, positioning me as his exclusive artist to the world. He was creating the reliance Sonia warned about. My first instinct was fury, a hot, sharp thing in my throat. My second trained instinct was colder. I took screenshots. I saved the pages. I documented the unauthorized use. Then I called him. Julian, I saw the announcement. It's lovely, but we haven't signed anything yet. And that image of Chrysalis, he cut me off, his voice booming with cheerful certainty. Elara, momentum is everything. The city needs to see we're a united front. This is for your career. Don't get bogged down in the small print. The committee loved the announcement. They're expecting those sketches. He was gaslighting with optimism, framing protection as pettiness. I let a thread of worried hesitation into my voice. I just don't want any misunderstandings. There are none. We're a team. Now focus on the sketches. Think of the plaza. I played my part. I attended a gallery dinner that week, a charity fundraiser where Julian held court. I wore a simple black dress, smiled, and made small talk with collectors who congratulated me on the huge news. I saw the other artists in his stable, a gifted, anxious glassblower named Leo and a textile artist named Miriam with tired eyes. They nodded at me with a mixture of welcome and pity, a look that said, "Welcome to the gilded cage." Julian gave a toast, champagne flute held high. To the visionaries, the ones who see the world not as it is, but as it could be. My role is simple: to clear away the noise, the doubt, the business, the legalese, so your pure creativity can reach the world. You create. I handle the rest. That's the partnership. The room applauded. I clinked my glass, the smile fixed on my face. The arrogance was breathtaking. He was not just exploiting them, he had convinced himself he was their savior. The legalese he dismissed was the very architecture of their ownership. I submitted the preliminary sketches for the Plaza Commission by email on Tuesday. Low resolution, watermarked PDFs, not the high resolution files. They were broad, conceptual drawings of a soaring, interlaced metal form. I noted in the email conceptual explorations for discussion purposes only. All rights reserved, I was building my paper trail brick by brick. Marcus Ford called me on Thursday. His voice was low even over the secure line. I found the holding company. It's called Thorn IP Holdings LLC. Registered in Delaware, of course. It owns Verge Gallery, and it's been in quiet talks with Aurelian Collective, a European luxury home goods retailer. They're negotiating a master licensing agreement for a curated portfolio of contemporary sculptural works and derivative design elements. My breath caught. Derivative design elements. Exactly. Furniture accents, wallpaper patterns, lighting fixtures based on artists' works. The draft. Term sheet 1 acquired lists artist assets under exclusive license. He paused. Your name is on it, Elara, along with Chrysalis and Plaza Commission, TBC. He's shopping your work before you've even signed. He's betting you will, or that he can pressure you into it. The valuation is based on the perpetual license granting full derivative rights. The pieces snap together with an almost audible click. The vague clause. The pressure for verbal assent. The unauthorized use of images to create momentum, the demand for preliminary work. It was all in service of this, bundling my creativity and that of others into a tidy package to be sold to a corporation. We would not be artists, we would be anonymous design sources for overpriced side tables. Can you get me the draft? I asked, my voice calm. It's in your secure Dropbox now. Read only. Don't download it to your main machine. I thanked him and ended the call. The studio was quiet. The late afternoon sun slanted through the high windows, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. On my desk sat 3 documents. On the left, Julian's original, vague, predatory contract unsigned. In the middle, my own clear, limited professional draft agreement, which he had dismissed with a laugh. On my screen, the secured file from Marcus, the draft master license listing my life's work as an asset. I looked from one to the other. The narrative was all there. His bad faith, my good faith effort to formalize terms, his commercial exploitation of my work based on a non-existent agreement. The anxious preparation was over. The cunning strategy was fully formed. All that remained was the execution. A cold, focused smile touched my lips, reflected in the dark glass of my monitor. The trap was not just set. He had walked right into it, and now I held the spring. The silence in my studio the morning of the Verge Gallery's Plaza Ascendant vernissage was different. It wasn't the quiet of creation, but the calm before a strategic unveiling. My tools were laid out, but they weren't torches and grinders. They were documents printed on heavy bond paper and neatly stacked in a slim leather portfolio. My copyright certificates bore official seals raised to the touch. I had the screenshot of Julian's announcement using my image of Chrysalis. The email chain showed my clear, limited agreement and his dismissive reply. And the final piece, printed in a separate confidential sleeve, was the draft term sheet for the master licensing deal between Thorn the Mopi Holdings and Aurelian Collective, my name and work listed as an asset. I dressed with deliberate care in a tailored steel grey suit, not a flowing artist's tunic. I chose sleek low heels and pulled my hair back in a severe knot. I looked less like a vulnerable artist and more like a principal. arriving to take possession of a contested asset. The reflection in my studio's full length mirror showed a woman of focused resolve. The anxious energy of the past weeks had crystallized into a cool, humming readiness. The Verge Gallery was transformed for the evening. The usual stark white walls were bathed in shifting colored light. A jazz trio played in a corner, their sound a sophisticated murmur beneath the buzz of conversation. The city's cultural elite mingled with wealthy patrons and press, their champagne flutes glittering like captured stars. In the center of the main room, covered by a dramatic black cloth, stood the maquette for the Plaza Commission. My conceptual sketches had been rendered in 3 dimensions by a model maker Julian hired, another attempt to muddy the waters of authorship. I saw Julian holding court near the bar, his silver hair catching the light. He spotted me and his smile widened, a shark noticing familiar prey. He excused himself and cut. Through the crowd, "Elara, you look formidable," he said, the compliment laced with surprise. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Big night. The city councillor is here along with the press from Art Forum. After my speech, we unveil the model. It will be spectacular. I have a special announcement that will cement our legacy." "I am sure you do," I said, my smile neutral. I did not correct his use of R. He patted my arm, a proprietary gesture. "Just enjoy. Let me handle the business." He drifted back to his circle of admirers. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter but did not drink. I moved through the room, nodding at acquaintances, feeling the weight of the portfolio in my hand. I saw Leo the glassblower looking strained. Miriam gave me a tight, sympathetic smile. They were here, bound to him, witnessing what they believed was my impending ensnarement. After 30 minutes of mingling, Julian tapped a microphone at the front of the room. The jazz trio fell silent. "Friends, patrons, visionaries," he began, his voice a warm and commanding instrument. "Welcome to a glimpse of the future. Tonight is not just about unveiling a model, it is about unveiling a new paradigm for art in our city." He spoke about beauty and legacy and the gallery as a catalyst. He praised the city committee for their foresight. Then he turned his gaze to me, a spotlight of performative gratitude. And none of this would be possible without the breathtaking talent of our spotlight artist, Elara Vasquez, an artist who understands that true creation requires partnership. The crowd applauded politely. I inclined my head. "But partnership must evolve," Julian continued, his tone shifting to one of groundbreaking revelation. "For too long, great art has been sequestered, accessible only to the few. What if we could bring the emotional power of a masterpiece like Elara's chrysalis into everyday lives?" He gestured dramatically to a large banner featuring the sculpture. "What if beauty could be democratized?" A murmur of interest ran through the crowd. My spine straightened. This was the moment. "Tonight," Julian announced, beaming, "I am thrilled to announce a groundbreaking new initiative. Verge Gallery has entered an exclusive partnership with the Aurelian Collective, a global leader in luxury living, to bring accessible art to the world." A screen descended behind him. An image flashed up of a sleek, modern floor lamp. Its base was a stylized, simplified, and utterly bastardized version of the central form of chrysalis. It was my art, rendered into a mass-produced home decor. Item. Through sensitive reproduction and derivative design, we will translate the vision of our artists into objects of daily inspiration. This is the future, commerce serving creativity. The crowd erupted in louder applause, a mix of genuine excitement and polite confusion. Cameras flashed. Julian stood radiant, a king unveiling his new kingdom. He held up his hands for quiet, his eyes scanning for me, ready to usher me forward as his compliant trophy. Elara, darling, come up. Let them see the face behind the genius. This was the moment. The trap had sprung from his own arrogance. I did not move from where I stood a few rows back in the crowd. Instead, I raised my voice, clear and steady, cutting through the residual clapping. A fascinating business model, Julian, though it relies on one critical error. The room quieted, heads turning. Julian's smile faltered for a microsecond before broadening into a patronizing grin. He chuckled into the microphone. The artistic mind always questioning, Elara, artists create. Let the businessmen handle the commerce. You need guidance, not contracts. Now come up here. He was trying to shush me in front of everyone, framing my defiance as charming artistic temperament. I did not budge. I opened my portfolio. The guidance I needed, I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room, was to understand the terms you insisted were mere boilerplate. The guidance I took was to formalize our arrangement in writing, which you ignored. I held up my one-page limited license agreement. This document, sent to you on April 14th, defines the scope of our collaboration for the City Commission. You dismissed it. You proceeded as if your vague and predatory contract was in effect. A confused ripple went through the audience. Julian's face tightened. This is neither the time nor the place for this, Elara. We can discuss your anxieties later. The time is now, I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I held up another document. This is the copyright registration for Chrysalis, filed and dated prior to your announcement using its image. You have no license to use it for promotion, and certainly none to license its design to the Aurelian Collective. I turned to the screen with the lamp. That is copyright infringement, willful and commercial. Gasps echoed in the room. The city councillor, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, stared intently. The art forum reporter scribbled furiously. Julian's charm vanished, replaced by cold fury. You signed a verbal agreement. You are my exclusive artist. Under the statute of frauds, I replied, the legal term dropping into the room like a stone, a multi-year exclusive representation must be in writing to be enforceable. We have no written agreement. You have a draft contract I never signed and a clear and narrow one I provided that you refused to sign. What you do have is evidence of infringement. I then held up the final page, still in its confidential sleeve but clearly visible. And this is a draft term sheet between Thorn IP Holdings and Aurelian Collective, listing my work, Chrysalis, and the pending Plaza Commission as assets under exclusive license, an agreement you were negotiating while claiming a partnership with me. You were planning to sell my intellectual property before you even owned the rights to it. The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of the projector. Julian had gone pale, his mouth a thin and bloodless line. He looked from the damning document in my hand to the horrified faces of the crowd. His kingdom was crumbling in real time. I delivered the final blow, my voice calm and declarative. There is another matter. Thorn IP Holdings had a silent partner, a majority investor who grew weary of your litigious reputation. Last month, I purchased that partner's entire stake. The transaction closed quietly on Friday. You are currently the minority owner, and as of today, you are terminated from any operational role. You are, in fact, trespassing in my gallery. I nodded to the side of the room. Two uniformed security guards, men I had met with that afternoon and who now answered to the gallery's new ownership, stepped forward. Julian stood frozen at the microphone, a statue of shattered avarice. You cannot do this, he sputtered. But no charming words came. the reality of the legal consequences, infringement, breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent representation, dawned in his eyes, stripping him bare. The head guard, a large man named Carl, approached the dais. "Mr. Thorne, you need to come with me, please." The spectacle was horrific and mesmerizing. Julian, the charismatic king of the local art world, was escorted off his own stage, through the parted and silent crowd, and out the main doors. The silence held for a long moment after they disappeared. Then all eyes turned to me. I walked to the front of the room and placed my portfolio on the podium. I looked out at the crowd, at the shocked patrons, the intrigued counselor, the weary but now hopeful faces of Leo and Miriam. "The partnership Julian promised was a fiction," I said, my voice firm but without malice. "A fiction designed to exploit. Real partnership is built on clear terms, mutual respect, and transparent ownership. The city's Plaza Commission is a vision I still believe in. I have already provided City Hall with my certified copyrights and a full and documented history of this evening's revelations. They have affirmed the Commission will proceed directly with me under a new and clear contract that protects the city's investment and my artistic integrity." I looked at the covered maquette. The art is what matters, not the predatory frameworks built around it. Tonight the framework changed. The gallery will be closed for reimagining. Thank you. I stepped down. The applause started slowly, then built into a deeper and more considered sound than the frantic clapping for Julian's flashy announcement. The counselor came over, her hand extended. "Mrs. Vasquez, we will need to meet first thing tomorrow. The city does not appreciate being used as leverage in a fraud." "Neither do I, counselor," I said, shaking her hand. "I will have my lawyer, Sonia Reyes, contact your office." Several months later, the space on the corner of Mercer and Fifth no longer bore the sleek and cold Verge logo. The new sign, crafted from brushed steel and illuminated from within, read the Artisan's Accord. Inside, the lighting was warmer. The walls were still white, but now they held not only artwork, but framed documents. On a central pillar under glass was a simple one-page exhibition agreement. Its terms were clear: a non-exclusive license for display and sale for a set term, a transparent commission split, and a bolded clause stating the artist retained all copyrights, including all rights to reproduce, prepare derivative works, and license the artwork. Any commercial licensing of the artwork's image by the gallery required a separate and written agreement. It was my draft, refined. It was the anti-Thorne contract. The inaugural show featured my chrysalis, now with a small plaque that told an abbreviated version of its story, a story of art and reclaimed ownership. Alongside it were stunning new works from Leo, whose glass sculptures caught the light in webs of color, and from Miriam, whose woven tapestries hummed with quiet power. They were my first artists under the new accord. I stood with Sonia by a small table holding a bottle of Prosecco and 3 glasses. The third was for our newest artist, a young painter named Anya, who had just signed her first ever gallery agreement without a moment of fear or confusion. "To clear terms," Sonia said, raising her glass, her eyes sparkling. "To not needing a law degree to understand them," Anya added, a grateful smile on her face. I clinked my glass with theirs. "To the work and to owning it." As we drank, I looked around the space I now stewarded. The stakes had been terrifyingly high. My career, my life's work, and nearly $500,000 on the line. But the victory was not just in keeping them. It was in transforming the very structure that had threatened them. The legal consequences for Julian proceeded through the courts, a messy civil suit for damages led by Sonia. But the real consequence was here in this well lit room where artists could stand next to their work and know to the letter what was theirs. Exploitation relied on ambiguity, on hope clouding judgment. Protection lay in clarity, in the quiet power of a well drafted line. I had left the law to create only to find that creation's greatest defense was the very craft I had left behind. Now they worked in concert, the torch and the treaty. And this gallery, this accord, was their first and shared masterpiece,